Israel says that it has the right to defend itself against any aggression. What are the implications of the recent attacks, not only between the two sides, but in the region as well?
I agree that Israel, like any state, has a right to defend itself, but that's not what international law says. And in fact, in general, in international law, no country has the right to defend itself by force unless they've exhausted peaceful means. Has Israel exhausted peaceful means? No. In fact, it knows exactly how to stop rocket attacks. I don't think the region's likely to get involved, frankly. First of all, everyone's afraid of the United States, and it's just too dangerous for others to get involved, just as they didn't get involved in cast lead. So as long as the U.S. participates in the attacks, as it is doing, it's not standing outside looking. It's providing the arms, it's providing the diplomatic support, so it's a direct participant. And as long as that's happening, the world isn't going to get involved, just as the world didn't get involved in the U.S. invasion of Iraq.
And how would you assess the timing of these attacks?
Well, first of all, they go on constantly. I mean, Israel and the U.S. are constantly attacking Gaza. A state of siege is an act of war, and the U.S. and Israel have maintained a constant siege. It really took off in January 2006, interestingly. I mean, it was plenty bad before, but January 2006, it escalated. The reason was there was a free election in Palestine, and people voted the wrong way, and that has to be punished. So instantly, the U.S. And Israel, with the European Union following along, initiated harsh punishment of the population. The U.S. also instituted another policy, which is normal when a population votes the wrong way. Organize a military coup to overthrow the government. That's routine. And immediately the U.S. began to organize a military coup. It's supposed to be led by Dahlan, you know, Fatah strongman. Well, the government preempted the coup. That's a major crime. It's bad enough to vote the wrong way in a free election, but to block a U.S.-run military coup that's planning to overthrow the government, and now we're off in major criminality. So the siege got far more intense, much more brutal, a lot of violence and so on, and it essentially continues without a stop. And there's very fluctuations, so like cast lead was the worst part. And since then there's been a kind of a truce. And if Israel wanted, and the U.S. wanted to stop the Qassam missiles, they know how to do it. Reinstitute the truce. Hamas repeatedly called for a truce, called for it again a couple of days before the killing of Jabari, the main issue. And Israel recognizes officially that during the very few months when Israel abided by the truce, there were no rockets. So they could reinstitute it if they wanted to defend themselves. But given the fact that there are peaceful means, they're perfectly available, there's no justification in international law for use of force. And if there is, you have to appeal to the Security Council.
So as we said earlier, Israel says that it has the right to defend itself against ongoing rocket attacks from militants coming from Gaza, and this recent assault was merely to provide security for its population. How effective is this strategy in advancing its long-term interests and providing security?
It's not, providing security is not a high concern for Israel or other states. In fact, if you go back to 1971, Israel made a fundamental decision, crucial. It had a choice between security and expansion. What happened in 1971 is that President Sadat of Egypt offered Israel a full peace treaty in return for withdrawal from the occupied territories, and in fact he only cared about the Sinai. Peace treaty with Israel with Egypt gives Israel a security in the international system. There was no Palestinian issue then. So that they could have essentially full security. They debated it, decided to reject it, preferred to expand at that time into the Sinai. And as always, the question is, what's the U.S. going to do? There was a split inside the U.S. Nixon administration. State Department wanted to accept the peace treaty. Henry Kissinger opposed it. He called for what he called stalemate, no negotiations, just force. So with Kissinger's backing, Israel rejected it. And since that time, that's essentially what led to the '73 war. Since that time, Israel and the U.S. have consistently rejected security in favor of expansion. And that's what's going on right now. Gaza's totally occupied. You know, sea, land, air, obviously. It's a prison. The West Bank, U.S. and Israel are essentially taking over what they want. All of this is illegal. It's all criminal. But as long as the U.S. backs it and participates in it, it'll continue. And it has nothing to do with security. I mean, take, say, the wall in the West Bank, which is called the security wall. There's nothing at all to do with security. If Israel was concerned about security, it would have built the wall on the international border. Then they could make it, you know, a mile high, tanks patrolling on both sides, totally impenetrable, and so on. But if they had done it there, it would have inconvenienced illegal Israeli settlers. So they built it somewhere where it would inconvenience, in fact, harm Palestinians. But the issue is not security. And in fact, Israel is not alone in this respect. For great powers, major powers, even small ones, the security of the population is not usually a high priority. There are other interests, power interests, and so on. So you talk about security, of course, but if you take a look, rarely. I mean, even take, say, fear of terror. Take the invasion of Iraq again. We're supposed to be fighting a war on terror. Every intelligence agency, including the CIA, informed the Bush administration that invading Iraq was very likely to increase the threat of terror, which in fact it did, way beyond what they expected. But that wasn't a consideration. I mean, terrorist attacks against the population, okay, live with them. What we want is power and profit.
It's very true. Professor Chomsky, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.